afternoon, good afternoon, and welcome to the Marketing Gem. It's going to be a quick one this week. There's just Jonathan and myself. Diane is still suffering with the lurgy. Today's show, we both sort of saw an article in Marketing Week about Uber, and they've revamped their logo. Now, we think that's a nice bit of iteration, but really, why are you fiddling with the deck chairs on the Titanic when there's a lot of concerns going on beyond just the font of the brand? Anyway, so let me introduce Jonathan. Jonathan Darby, many years experience with media buying and working in advertising agencies. Myself, Kevin Lynch, many years with digital technology for media production. So let's just get to the question. What do you think they should be doing, Jonathan?
I think that the article had made a very strong point, which is the brand logo, particularly in a brand as young as Uber, doesn't really need to be changed 4 times in very, very short succession. Even with iteration, by and large, the logo wants to stay reasonably constant. Similar in look, feel, and style over an extended period of time. It's sort of, as the brand implies, the implicit guarantee that you're buying the right product. If you live in an environment where there's lots of fraud and all sorts of other things, so perhaps the logo is even more important, that it's maintained and is consistent. Anyway, that's a separate argument, but they've been playing around with the brand in terms of the logo, when actually there are much more fundamental problems with the brand in the background. Okay, they may not wish to draw those to other people's attention, but actually that's what they should be focused on, rather than tinkering with what the look and feel is on the outside. And I think there's a lot to be learned from that. I think there are a lot of business out there who sort of go, oh, yes, logo, very important, can't go anywhere without one. When the reality is, actually, it's quite a long way down on your shopping list. Make sure that the product is well defined, doing its job properly, and can't actually go off the rails and bring everything into disrepute. So that was my point of view when we started having this conversation.
Yeah, I guess I should recap for those who've been sort of living under stone for the last sort of couple of years. Uber is a Silicon Valley startup that's attempting to revolutionize the personal transport business, otherwise known as taxis, where basically users and drivers run an app on their phone, and you can request a vehicle. You tap where you want to go. They've got demand-led pricing, so that if you want a taxi at 11 p.m., there's lots and lots. You'll find that quite expensive, but there will be cars available. There's a lot of algorithmic magic that goes on that may or may not be of concern to various people. There are concerns in the major cities. Taxi is one of those things. Certainly, I know in Dublin, sort of from about 1995 through about 2000, you just couldn't get a taxi because they'd only issued sort of 2,500 licenses, and the economy had just gone through the roof, and people were mortgaging £200,000 to have a taxi license in Dublin. It was that much of a license to print money. As ever, technology is disrupting this thing. Certainly in London, your licensed black cab who's done his knowledge on the streets, he feels very concerned about Uber undercutting him for price. There are concerns that some of the drivers that they're using may in fact be former criminals and things like that. As ever, it's sort of ground zero with new technology. It reminds me of eBay in the very start, and I mean, my biggest concern about Uber was they used to have this thing called the God screen, where they could see everybody in the world and where they were going in the taxis. But I think someone sort of said, well, that's not very ethical, and they've had to take that away. So Uber is one of those companies where there's lots of very clever people doing lots of very clever things, but they don't always think through the implications of some of the things that they do. You know, they're the sort of people who, I think, if they were movie characters, I think they remind me of the sort of people that Jeff Goldblum said about in Jurassic World. You know, you just thought you could do it, you never stopped to think, should I do it? And in the middle of all this negative news, they decide to rebrand their logo. To my view, sorry for going on so much after that. To my view, I thought this was actually a bit of Machiavellian media manipulation. It's like, we've got all these negative things to talk about. There's nothing positive we can say about the brand. Oh, let's talk about our revamp of the logo. I saw the new logo and the old logo, and I couldn't even tell the difference. And I thought, oh, I wonder, am I even doing the right thing here? But apparently, the driving reason for this was that they want the brand to be more recognizable on the mobile platforms. And that's a theme that we've talked about many times on the Marketing Gem, you know, designing your logo so that it looks good in on the mobile web, on people's phones and things. So here they are. But I do think they need to have a clear strategy of where they're going and making sure that this redesigned logo fits in that. Jonathan?
Yes, I mean, my concern was more along the lines of everyone's got issues with disruptive technology because it affects business, and it may not have affected your business yet, but it could come along at any moment and disrupt everything. And there's a lot of stuff that Uber's done, which is, as you said, very clever. But they do need to get a few things in order. The man who went around shooting people in North America, small town America or whatever, a few weeks ago, allegedly was an Uber taxi driver. Yeah, they've got to make sure that some of the basics are in place before they start fiddling around with what really is just window dressing. So that was really a reminder to us all that the product is king, and the rest of it, in a sense, follows on from getting that right. And you know, as a marketeer, getting your vision, getting your mission, getting your strategy all ducks in a row, to use a horrible cliche, for a change, though it's not raining here, so I'm using the wrong one today. You know, you've got to make sure all the basics are in place, and then you can worry about the fripperies that go on top. Not saying that actually, you know, a good logo isn't important. It's just that there are other things that are probably more important in the priorities that go with creating a brand, and that's the lesson for big businesses as well as small businesses. You know, and it's like any investment that you make. Always sit down and work out how best you're making that investment. It was interesting to see that Unilever had decided to change the way that they allocate marketing budgets as a massive company, and they turned around and said, actually, you pitch for the marketing budget now as you would pitch for any other budget to do with running the business. So, you know, you're actually in competition with, do we build a new production line? Do we open a new distribution area? You have to justify the return on the investment of a marketing budget in the same way as you would have to demonstrate a return on investment in any other investment. So it's there are ways of doing these things and running a business as a business, and not as a, oh yes, we will use that as a bit of a distraction. As Kevin said earlier on, we haven't got anything very much we can say about the brand today, so we'll focus on rearranging the deck chairs. It's just a shame, because I think that the potential is, if you have a disruptive brand running around in an environment and it starts going off the rails, it can taint the other brands in the same environment. So it could potentially damage the likes of Google and, let's say, Facebook and other brands that have been disruptive on their way to growth, because people start to question really how well managed and what the governance is of these billion-dollar businesses coming out of North America. Okay,
that fits quite well. I think Uber is not going to damage these very large companies that are now floated on the stock market, but in the actual sector, there's a competitor called Lyft. Now, I'm going to have to confess at this point, I signed up for Uber about 3 years ago when they first launched in London, but I couldn't. I was in a hurry and there was a black cab right there. So I just took the black cab. But I haven't been in London that much that I've actually needed a taxi. So I still have my credit, which I haven't actually used yet. Yes, I've heard a lot of things about Uber. The other thing I heard was that in parts of America, the people who are the sort of business managers for Uber, they call their competitors cars, and then when they're in the car, they sort of say, "Oh, you think working for Lyft is good? You know, I actually work for Uber, you know, and here's a special invite code, and you know, you'll get a really good deal from us." So there's lots of things about Uber that definitely make you worried. I mean, I still don't think they've gone to the market yet. They haven't done an IPO, and they've been. I know that, for example, Google have a significant shareholding in them, so that when you look up a route in Google Maps, Uber are offered, saying, you know, they get a plug there saying, "Do you want to use Uber for this journey?" Very interesting, that other news you were saying about Unilever treating marketing as taken away. You know, marketing has to pay its way in the business. Personally, I think that's one of those strategies that will do just fine until Procter and Gamble start taking significant market share from them in the various markets, and then I can just say, "Oh, we've always been a marketing company." So I think the current marketing person at the top of Unilever must be feeling very, very uncomfortable. But you know, this will go through. Market share will erode. It'll then be pointed out to them that the cost of getting back the market share they lost through skimping on their marketing budgets will be 3 or 4 times what they would have spent otherwise. And people saying, yeah. Any feelings on that side? Is that how you think it'll play out?
I don't actually necessarily agree with you. I think that what it encourages is the marketeers within the company to realise that marketing is an investment and that it has to be justified. And just writing in a line of 10% of sales or whatever, however they derive their marketing budget within each different company, which is, you know, sort of usually different amongst most companies. They all have different ways of doing it. And what they will start doing is saying, right, we've got a pool of 100 different brands in here. We can't afford to give each one of them £1 million. And maybe the investment is better made if we take 10 of those brands and really pump them for everything that they're worth, and then use that money to reinvest in other brands in year 2, year 3, year 4, etc. And to be honest, one could argue that P&G have done very much the same thing. And it's not a completely revolutionary tactic in terms of marketing. It's just one of the biggest marketing or brand name companies has publicly announced that they're looking at doing their business that way. It's very easy to just sort of have a budget and hand it on from one year to the next without actually thinking about it as an investment. And that's what I like about that discipline, is it makes you go and say, is this money as well spent as it could be? So I agree with you, Kevin, to a certain extent, but you shouldn't have no budget continually from a brand, but equally you have to look at it in context of running a business. and justify its investment. And it sort of employs the brain to say, I've got to make this money work as hard as I can. Otherwise, I'll be looking for another job.
That's very interesting. When I was doing my my business studies stuff, we spent some time on budgeting, and apparently the best way to do budgeting is you start from year zero and say, we have nothing, what do we want to spend our money on? And that was very much the approach that was emphasized and taught to us. But when we then looked to do the practical work around this and looked at what was happening in our organizations, every company was on last year's budget plus or minus 5 or 10%. That was pretty much how budgeting goes. And you know, the best marketing the companies that do marketing best, or the companies that achieve best execution, they don't always just go with what they had before. They think about this thing from first principles and say, how actually are we getting the maximum money for this? But yes, a lot of these budgets tend, especially in older, more conservative companies, lots of these budgets are just, you know, last year plus or minus 5 to 10%. It's you know, and it's that thing about Einstein, you know, I think as Einstein famously said, you know, it's the definition of madness to keep doing the same things and expect to get different results, you know. And this sort of, you need good critical thinking in a business, and by making people justify every penny that the company invests with them, excuse me, by making them justify every penny the company invests with them, it's certainly an approach that should spawn innovative and clever thinking. You know, I mean, I wonder in the 80s when people spent a lot of money on television advertising, was that just a case of where they rolled the budgets over year by year, or, you know, did companies think, well, you know, we've achieved a certain level, we can throttle back? From your point of view, Jonathan, I mean, what sort of cycles of spending and marketing do you think work best?
To be honest, the closer you can get to continuous advertising presence, the better, if you want to grow a brand. Lots and lots of brands would have, let's say, £1 million to throw at above the line advertising every year, and they'd take it all together and bundle it into 4 weeks, and they'd get a big increase in awareness, and they might even get quite a big increase in market share for the following 8 weeks after the campaign was running, and maybe even longer than that. But then it would get whittled away, and essentially you ended up with, let's say, 13 weeks of the year where you were showing positive, and 39 weeks of the year when you were showing negative share. So I'd always try and encourage my clients to spread the load over as broad a period as possible. And that's basically how we went about growing, say, the Gaviscon brand by 20% per annum in terms of sales and profitability 7 years on the trot. And it was, you know, all done on television. So it was not a small brand. And we created the fireman and did all sorts of other bits and pieces in the background. But the reality was, we spent more time promoting the brand with small gaps in between. And that's what, if you like, the digital media age enables people to do more of, which is continually be visible and think about how you do it in cycles, and try and be always pushing the edge so that you are continually building awareness and familiarity, rather than having 3 quarters of the year with it declining and 1 quarter of the year with it going up.
How seasonal is things like over-the-counter medication, say, it's gone for stomach problem relief?
Right. Heartburn isn't seasonal. Heartburn is when you start getting it, you tend to get it because of lifestyle. So smoking, probably being slightly overweight, not getting enough exercise, eating the wrong sorts of things, which is continuous. But you're absolutely right. Medicine was a very different thing, and we managed to work out the sort of dynamics in terms of temperature that would lift sales, and therefore our objective was to have a short-term buying strategy, which allowed us to, if you like, mirror rapid changes in temperature with a rapid increase in the volume of advertising being seen by the consumer.
But for a steady, I think, what's the phrase, run rate or something like that, for run rate products that don't have seasonal variation, best to have an advertising budget that tracks that, and you're spending that budget proportionately through the 52 weeks of the year. That's your advice there?
Yes, and particularly if actually what you're actually trying to do is continually recruit new people into the brand, because they come into the brand because sort of what started off as a nuisance and something that, say, Lenny's could sort out, has progressively and slowly got worse and worse. Then yes, it's an idea that you sort of say, right, this is an area where we can pick up and continually recruit new users, and by and large you don't lose those people. You might get them going into the NHS and going on to a more powerful proper medicine for sorting out the problem, or they might go into a diet regime or whatever. So there will be a certain amount of tail off at the other end in terms of consumers. But the essence, almost like Coca-Cola, is you are continually recruiting, so that there's always going to be a growing demand for your product. And there are brands that are seasonal and highly seasonal. And again, you can look at those and see whether or not there is a business case for de-seasonalising. So let's say within the Unilever portfolio, Magnum, you might turn around and say ice cream, seasonal product. But actually, over the years, you can use, say, price promotions and things like that to fill the gaps where the seasonal demand goes down, and the treating demand within the home can be boosted. So you shift things from selling at venue and out and about to through the supermarket when you're out of season. But again, you can develop and devise marketing and communication strategies to handle that.
And at the other end, one example that I'm aware of is, in terms of being very responsive, is Virgin Media. They have an open sort of book with the online advertising people that if the weather forecast says it's raining in a specific area, they will buy ads for when people are looking at satellite TV saying Virgin works all the time, even when it's not raining, or even when it is raining, so that people who have, who are having marginal satellite television reception and it's raining and the trees are holding the water and it's blocking their signal, those people, when they go online and say, what can I do about this? Up comes the ad saying, switch to cable. So I think that's quite a good spectrum we've covered there, from people looking at long-term weather forecasts to try and fix how much ice cream we're going to produce to sell to venues by the seaside or in the countryside or whatever, versus how much we're going to send to the supermarkets, with those kind of applying to the sort of on-demand advertising. So I think we'll look to wrap up now. So I just say that you're watching the Marketing Gem. It's part of the Link for Growth network, and if you're interested in that, look for linkforbusiness.biz. I think that's the link. Oh, I should know this stuff better than that. But while I look that up, Jonathan, do you want to sort of share your thought of the week or tip of the week or whatever?
Yeah, I think the tip of the week would be make sure that you do treat marketing as an investment. So, make sure that all the fundamentals are in place and take time out to review them on a regular basis. Certainly allow yourself an hour a week to sit there and sort of think, right, what am I doing in my marketing, and am I doing the right things? And is it justifying the money I'm spending on it? If it isn't, what can I do better? It is an investment. It isn't just a line in your budget. and you should make it work for you. So that would be my broad business tip of the week.
Okay, and I'll just say you're watching the Marketing Gem on Link for Growth. You can find out more about Link for Growth by going to linkforgrowth.biz. Okay, so I think at that point we'll say thank you very much for watching. Hopefully we'll have Diane back next week, finally strong after her little illness. So thank you for watching, and if you have any questions or any feedback for us, do tweet to us at the Marketing Gem on Twitter.
Okay, before we sign off, can I just do a plug for a local business? I bought a car from Priest's in Chesham last week. They're a Ford dealer in the area, which Kevin knows more about than I probably do. And I have to say, I thought they did an excellent job on selling a second-hand car. Having done all the usual checks and hit the tyres and walked around and negotiated a really very fair price. I looked at the car at the weekend and thought, blimey, they changed all 4 tyres as well. They didn't actually have to do that. It was perfectly legal when I test drove it, and they didn't actually mention it. And I'm sort of thinking, you know, you guys are really sort of underselling the services that you provide. Now, I'm sure that there are always positive and negative stories from small businesses, but that's a rather nice sort of area to end on for a company, you know, sort of someone who's talking about independent and SME businesses, is that sometimes they actually overperform and, you know, surprise and delight the end user.
Sounds like a great marketing partner for these days forward. I'm assuming, by the way, no financial inducements were given to you to give them that plug. Just full disclosure there.
Yes, I mean, I still think I've got a bit of a bargain because I'm, you know, having gone through Auto Trader about a dozen times since, I still can't find one of the same age, the same mileage, within £1,000 of what I paid. That is, I was £1,000 cheaper than the average in the market. But that's an aside. I hadn't expected them to put 4 brand new tyres on the car, and they did that without even, you know, sort of a comment. So I just thought that was a bit of that's the nice side of dealing with a company that actually cares about the consumer.
That's very good, and I shall certainly bear that in mind the next time I'm looking for a new car. All right, well, thanks everyone. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. All right, take care. Have a prosperous week.